Claire Sawyer vanished without a trace, leaving behind a house filled with unanswered questions. Days later, her husband Benjamin was found dead, his body hiding a gruesome secret that would shock the entire town. What dark truth did Benjamin take to the grave, and where was Claire? On a quiet Monday morning in the town of Elridge Falls, a place where crime was so rare it almost felt like folklore, something strange began to unfold at the edge of Willow Creek Road. The Sawyer house, a two-story colonial with white shutters and a carefully manicured lawn, had always stood out, not because it was flashy, but because it was so perfectly normal. Benjamin and Claire Sawyer had lived there for over 10 years, a childless couple in their early 50s who mostly kept to themselves. They waved politely at neighbors, attended the occasional community cookout, and were known to walk their golden retriever Milo every evening without fail. That morning, however, was different. The routine was broken. It was just after 8:00 a.m. when one of their neighbors, an older woman named Mrs. Dobbins, noticed the front door swinging open. That struck her as odd. Benjamin was known for being meticulous. The door was always locked, the porch always tidy. Now the welcome mat was flipped upside down, the daily newspaper remained untouched, and the dog barked relentlessly from somewhere inside the house. At first she thought perhaps they had an emergency. But when 2 more hours passed without any sign of life and the barking grew more frantic, she decided to call the police for a welfare check. When officers arrived, they entered cautiously. There were no signs of forced entry. The living room appeared undisturbed. A coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter beside a half-eaten slice of toast. The TV in the den was still on, broadcasting a muted morning news show. Upstairs, the door to the master bedroom was closed. It was behind that door that police made a grim discovery. Benjamin Sawyer was lying on the floor near the foot of the bed, a gun resting near his right hand, a single gunshot wound to the chest staining his shirt dark red. At first glance it looked like suicide, and a neat one at that. But there were no suicide notes, no letters of goodbye, only silence and confusion. More baffling, Claire Sawyer was nowhere to be found. Her personal belongings remained in the house. Her phone sat on the nightstand still charging. Her purse was hanging on the hook beside the door. Her car was parked in the driveway, untouched. Her slippers were neatly placed at the foot of the staircase. There were no signs of a break-in or a struggle, no furniture overturned, no blood elsewhere in the house, no shattered glass. Nothing appeared stolen. But Claire had vanished completely, as though she'd walked out of the house mid-morning and evaporated into thin air. At first, police considered the possibility that Claire had fled in distress after discovering Benjamin's body. But why would she leave without her phone or keys? Why wouldn't she call for help or alert a neighbor? The longer she remained missing, the more troubling the scenario became. Investigators began to consider a darker possibility. Had Claire been a victim rather than a witness? The neighborhood buzzed with speculation. Some whispered that maybe Benjamin had killed Claire first and taken his own life afterward. Others thought she might have killed him and run away. But the scene inside the house didn't support either theory completely. There was no forensic evidence suggesting Claire had been hurt or even present during Benjamin's final moments. And if she had planned to kill him, why leave behind all her essentials? Milo, the dog, was taken by animal control and examined. He was healthy but stressed, and oddly, his paws had traces of dirt, fresh soil, as if he'd been digging or walking through flower beds. That small detail was logged but not immediately seen as significant. The coroner's preliminary report indicated the time of death was somewhere between 11:00 p.m. and 1:00 a.m. the night before. That meant someone could have come or gone while the town slept. Security footage from nearby homes was requested, but the Sawyer home itself had no security cameras. Investigators began canvassing the neighborhood, asking about unusual sounds, unknown vehicles, anything out of the ordinary. Everyone agreed on one thing: Benjamin Sawyer was dead, and his wife, Claire, had disappeared without a trace. The perfect couple from the perfect house now sat at the center of a mystery that would only grow darker with each passing day. What began as a simple welfare check was quickly turning into something far more sinister. An unraveling of secrets that someone, it seemed, had tried desperately to bury. As detectives continued their investigation into the death of Benjamin Sawyer and the sudden disappearance of his wife Claire, the illusion of a peaceful, uneventful life began to crumble. On the surface, the Sawyers had always seemed like a couple grounded in routine, a pair who lived without drama. But once investigators began digging into their private world, they uncovered a tangle of secrets and quiet tensions that painted a far more complex picture. It started with the neighbors. Interviews with those who lived closest to the Sawyers revealed something that hadn't come up before. Several people mentioned that over the past 6 months, there had been noticeable changes in the couple's behavior. Claire had become more withdrawn, rarely attending neighborhood events, and she'd stopped walking the dog with Benjamin. He had been seen late at night, sometimes pacing in the backyard or sitting alone in the garage with the lights on well past midnight. One neighbor recalled hearing raised voices a few weeks earlier, muffled but unmistakably heated. As investigators dug deeper, Claire's co-workers at the local bookstore shared subtle but concerning details. Claire had confided in a colleague that she felt watched all the time. She never gave specifics, but she said Benjamin had grown possessive. There were also signs that Claire had been making quiet preparations, asking about travel agencies, browsing apartments for rent in a nearby city, and looking into private mailboxes. She hadn't filed for separation, but it was clear she had been considering a life away from her husband. Financial records added another layer of mystery. In the months leading up to Benjamin's death, someone had been withdrawing large sums of cash from a joint savings account. Amounts that were just under the threshold that would flag banking systems. Between January and April, nearly $40,000, 0 cents, had vanished. Claire's personal account, by contrast, showed minimal activity. She hadn't spent extravagantly or sent money anywhere obvious. Investigators couldn't determine where the cash had gone or what it was being used for. Then came the discovery of an insurance policy. Just 8 weeks before Benjamin died, Claire had purchased a new life insurance policy. What made it strange was that the policy insured her own life, not Benjamin's. She was listed as the insured, and Benjamin was the sole beneficiary. According to the paperwork, she had gone through with the process alone, signing and submitting documents without her husband's knowledge. The amount was modest, $150,000, 0 cents. But in light of her disappearance, it raised troubling questions. Why would she insure herself and name a man she was quietly planning to leave as the recipient? Had she been pressured into it? Or had she been trying to appease him? Digital forensics unearthed even more disturbing clues. Benjamin's phone had been wiped clean of messages and emails a day before his death, but the remnants that remained painted a picture of growing paranoia. He had been in frequent contact with the number listed under the name L. Morgan, but this individual could not be found. The phone number was prepaid and untraceable. All efforts to locate a person by that name turned up nothing, leading investigators to wonder if the contact was a fake identity, possibly even Benjamin himself using a second phone. On Claire's phone, which had remained untouched on the nightstand, there were several alarming texts from an unknown number. The messages were short, with phrases like, "He's watching, you need to leave," and "It's not safe anymore." The texts had begun 2 weeks before her disappearance and stopped the night Benjamin died. Investigators traced the number to a disposable phone that had been purchased at a gas station 2 towns over. Surveillance footage from that location was reviewed, but the buyer wore a hat and mask, making identification impossible. Every new piece of information made the case murkier. Was Claire running from her husband, or had she already met with foul play? Had Benjamin discovered something that drove him to the edge, or was he orchestrating a much darker scheme that unraveled faster than he expected? The Sawyers' marriage was no longer a story of suburban contentment. It had become a chilling tale of secrecy, suspicion, and fear, a slow-burning tension that had gone unnoticed for far too long. The more investigators uncovered, the more they realized something had been terribly wrong in that house for quite some time. And now, with Benjamin dead and Claire missing, the answers were growing colder by the hour. The search at the Sawyer residence intensified as the days passed, and the investigators decided it was time to look more thoroughly into every corner of the house, including the basement, a space that had been largely overlooked in the initial sweep. What they found there would shatter every assumption they had made about the quiet couple and push the case into a darker, more sinister direction. The basement was cluttered with boxes of old holiday decorations, unused furniture, and dusty storage bins. At first, nothing seemed out of place, but one officer noticed something unusual about a section of the wall, an odd patch of fresh plaster that didn't match the rest. It looked like a recent repair, hastily done and out of character with the otherwise meticulous upkeep of the home. With the help of a crowbar and some tools, the team removed part of the wall, revealing a hidden storage room behind it. Inside the concealed space was a chilling scene. A collection of women's belongings, items that had clearly been stashed away and forgotten, or deliberately hidden. There were scarves of different colors, delicate necklaces, a pair of ballet flats, and several pieces of jewelry that didn't belong to Claire. Investigators bagged each item carefully, hoping to use forensic analysis to uncover fingerprints or DNA that might identify their owners. Even more disturbing was the presence of bloodstains on some of the items. The forensic team confirmed that the blood belonged to more than one individual, and one sample matched a missing person from a case long considered cold. The name was Teresa Langston, a young woman who had disappeared 6 years earlier from a neighboring county. Her disappearance had baffled authorities and devastated her family, who had never given up hope of finding her alive. A small metal box lay tucked into a corner of the storage room. Inside it was a worn, leather-bound journal, filled with tightly packed, handwritten pages. The handwriting was neat, but hurried, almost frantic in places. The journal wasn't Claire's, nor did it belong to anyone in the immediate family. It was signed simply with the initials B.S. Investigators assumed it was Benjamin's. The contents of the journal sent shockwaves through the investigative team. It told a story from the perspective of a man who appeared to be confessing to something terrible. The entries described a pattern of kidnapping and confinement of women, all of whom had mysteriously disappeared from the area over the past decade. The journal detailed the fear and anger he felt toward these women, blaming them for personal betrayals and losses. The writer expressed paranoia that his wife had discovered the truth and would expose him. One entry was particularly chilling. It described the capture of Teresa Langston, describing her movements, the careful planning, and the way he kept her locked away in the basement. The journal went on to detail his growing desperation as police inquiries about Teresa's disappearance increased, and his fear that Claire had stumbled upon his secret. The discovery raised more questions than answers. How many women had Benjamin held captive in that hidden basement? How long had he been living this double life, hiding these horrors behind the façade of a peaceful family man? And most hauntingly of all, what had happened to Claire? Had she been a witness, a victim, or something else entirely? Forensic teams began combing the basement for more evidence, including DNA, fibers, and any sign of where the women might have been held. The hidden room was small, claustrophobic, and barely furnished. Too small for long-term imprisonment. This suggested the basement might have been a temporary holding place, or a storage spot for stolen items from the victims. Detectives speculated that Benjamin's obsession with control had led him to keep these trophies hidden away. The revelation that Benjamin Sawyer could be linked to the disappearance of Teresa Langston ignited a media frenzy. Reporters descended on Elridge Falls, eager to uncover every detail of the story. Public shock was intense, with many struggling to reconcile the image of the mild-mannered man they had known with that of a potential serial kidnapper and murderer. Despite the mounting evidence, Claire remained missing. Some investigators held on to a faint hope that she might have escaped and was hiding somewhere, too afraid or too traumatized to come forward. Others feared she had been the last victim, silenced to keep Benjamin's secret safe. The discovery of the hidden basement room changed the trajectory of the investigation. What began as a missing person and suspicious death case had now opened a window into a deeply disturbing and gruesome world. The quiet Sawyer house, so long a symbol of normalcy, had been a prison of horrors beneath the surface. With each new piece of evidence, it became clearer that Benjamin Sawyer was a man whose darkness went far beyond what anyone had imagined, and that the terrible secret he took to the grave might be just the tip of the iceberg. With the discovery of the hidden basement and the haunting journal, the investigation took on an urgent, desperate tone. Detectives shifted their focus to piecing together the timeline of Benjamin Sawyer's last days, trying to understand how such a dark secret could have remained hidden for so long and what exactly had happened to Claire Sawyer. One of the first leads came from reviewing Benjamin's electronic devices more deeply. His home computer, which had initially shown nothing suspicious, finally yielded a hidden folder encrypted with a password. After days of trying various combinations based on Benjamin's personal information, investigators gained access to the folder. Inside were dozens of photos and videos, all taken secretly in and around the Sawyer property. The images were disturbing, women, some appearing fearful, others resigned, often partially obscured by shadows or blurred by hurried movement. The videos were even worse, showing some of the captives restrained in the basement or in makeshift holding areas outside the house, their eyes wide with terror. None of the women were identified, but investigators matched a few faces to missing persons reports from across several counties. It became clear that Benjamin Sawyer's crimes extended beyond just Teresa Langston and included several other unsolved disappearances. The timeline in the journal and the time steps on the files aligned disturbingly well, confirming the pattern of abductions spanning nearly a decade. As detectives reviewed the media found on Benjamin's devices, they also noticed encrypted messages exchanged with unknown contacts. Forensic linguists and cyber specialists helped decode the cryptic communication, revealing a network of underground forums where users shared information about evading law enforcement and discussed dark fantasies involving captivity and control. The forums were a virtual gathering place for people with disturbing obsessions, and Benjamin had been an active member for years under a pseudonym. Some messages hinted at plans or threats related to his secret activities. In the midst of these grim discoveries, a new twist came from an unexpected source. A woman named Evelyn Parker, living in a neighboring town, came forward, claiming she had seen Claire Sawyer days before Benjamin's death. Evelyn was a waitress at a diner on the outskirts of town, and she remembered a woman matching Claire's description who appeared nervous, anxious, and repeatedly checked over her shoulder. Claire was not alone. She was with a man Evelyn did not recognize, and they spoke in hushed tones, their faces tense. This account raised hope that Claire had managed to escape and was trying to seek help, perhaps preparing to break free from the life she had endured. Detectives investigated Evelyn's tip thoroughly, tracking phone records and surveillance footage from nearby businesses. A shadowy figure, matching the description of the unknown man, was seen following Claire in the days before Benjamin's death, though his identity remained elusive. Meanwhile, the forensic examination of the basement and surrounding property continued to yield grim evidence. Ground-penetrating radar detected a small hollow beneath the backyard flower bed, where soil had been recently disturbed. Excavation revealed several small bones, too fragmented for immediate identification, but enough to confirm the presence of human remains. The grim discovery added a sense of urgency to the investigation, reinforcing the fear that Benjamin's reign of terror had ended only with his death, and perhaps Claire's disappearance was tied to a desperate attempt to escape or confront him. With every new revelation, the picture of Benjamin Sawyer grew darker. revealing a man consumed by control and violence, living a double life that shattered the peaceful image of suburban normalcy. But the mystery of Claire remained. Had she fallen victim like the others, or was she still out there, hidden and alive, waiting for rescue? The investigation now had a ticking clock feel. Officers were racing against time to find Claire, hoping she had managed to survive the nightmare and was somewhere, somehow, reaching out or waiting for someone to find her. The media attention increased, public pressure mounted, and the community's sense of shock deepened as more details of Benjamin's twisted world came to light. Detectives also explored Benjamin's relationships beyond the home. They uncovered old acquaintances, distant relatives, and former employees who described him as charming and persuasive, but sometimes dark and secretive. Some remembered instances of unexplained absences and odd behavior, but no one had connected the dots. As the pieces slowly assembled, the question loomed larger: who else might have known the truth? Had someone helped Benjamin hide his secret? And if so, would they come forward now? The deeper the investigation went, the more it became clear that Benjamin's death was only the beginning of the story. His secret had opened a door to a network of pain and suffering that reached far beyond the Sawyer household. But amid the horror, the search for Claire remained the single most urgent question. Because if she was alive, she was the key to unraveling the full truth behind the man who had taken his gruesome secret to the grave. As the investigation entered its most critical phase, the focus sharpened on uncovering the truth about Claire Sawyer's fate. Every lead, every piece of evidence pointed to a grim reality. But the detectives refused to give up hope. The months of searching, analyzing, and piecing together Benjamin's dark past culminated in a breakthrough that stunned everyone involved. A tip from a local hiker brought new life to the case. The man had been exploring a remote section of forest several miles from the Sawyer property when he stumbled across what looked like a makeshift campsite hidden beneath thick underbrush. The area was concealed from view, far from any trails or roads. Upon closer inspection, law enforcement found signs that someone had recently been living there: a small fire pit, scattered belongings, and most importantly, a journal with handwriting that matched Claire's style. The campsite became a focal point for search teams. Tracking devices picked up faint signals from a phone found nearby, but the battery was dead, and there was no immediate way to identify its owner. Investigators carefully combed the site for clues, piecing together how someone might have escaped captivity and survived in the wilderness. The discovery suggested Claire had been there, possibly hiding or attempting to flee from Benjamin's violent shadow. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of the bones found beneath the flower bed confirmed the worst fears. They belonged to multiple victims. All young women reported missing over the past decade. Each had been the subject of cold cases, leaving families with unanswered questions and lingering pain. The news sent shockwaves through the community, confirming Benjamin's role as a serial predator who had used his home as a prison and graveyard. However, the most unexpected revelation came from the final entries in Claire's recovered journal. The pages revealed a story of resilience and resistance, detailing how Claire had discovered Benjamin's horrific secret months before his. Instead of succumbing to fear, she had started to plan her escape carefully, gathering evidence and documenting his crimes in secret. She wrote about the terror she lived with daily, but also the hope that justice would eventually prevail. Claire's journal described how she managed to smuggle out small pieces of evidence, hiding them in places Benjamin would never find. She also revealed that she had confronted Benjamin in the days before his death, a confrontation that had escalated into violence. The journal implied that Benjamin's death was not a suicide, as originally believed, but the result of a struggle between the two. Claire's fate remained ambiguous in the journal, ending abruptly with a note of fear and determination. The discovery shifted the narrative entirely, and investigators re-examined the crime scene with fresh eyes, now considering the possibility that Claire had fought back and survived longer than anyone suspected. The shadowy figure seen by the waitress was theorized to be someone Claire had reached out to in desperation, perhaps an ally or rescuer who helped her escape to the remote campsite. Months of intensified search efforts in the surrounding forests followed. Rescue teams deployed search dogs, drones, and helicopters combing the wilderness for any sign of Claire. Volunteers joined in, driven by a mix of hope and heartbreak. The community, once shocked by the horrors within their midst, now rallied together, united in the hope of bringing Claire home. Then, a breakthrough came in the form of a blurry photo sent anonymously to the police. It showed a woman matching Claire's description, looking tired but alive, standing near a small cabin deep in the woods. The image was old, likely taken weeks before the tip about the campsite. It was enough to reignite the search and confirm that Claire was out there. The case took a new turn when a man was arrested in a nearby town, suspected of assisting Benjamin in covering up his crimes. Under questioning, he revealed that Claire had indeed escaped, but had been too afraid to contact anyone, fearing Benjamin's reach extended far beyond the local area. The man provided details about the hidden campsite and the network Benjamin used to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. Eventually, after an exhaustive search, Claire was found. She was weak, frightened, and deeply traumatized, but alive. Her rescue brought a wave of relief and sorrow. Relief that she had survived such an ordeal, sorrow for the years lost and the horrors she had endured. Her testimony would later help bring justice for the other victims, exposing the full extent of Benjamin Sawyer's crimes. In the end, the story that began with a missing wife and a dead husband revealed a darkness no one had expected. Benjamin had taken many secrets to the grave, but his greatest secret was the truth about the man behind the mask and the woman who refused to disappear without a fight. Claire's survival was a testament to courage amid unspeakable horror, a reminder that even in the darkest places, hope can endure. The case closed with the community forever changed, haunted by the past but determined to move forward, honoring the lives lost and the bravery of a woman who escaped a nightmare that no one else survived.